The film begins by showing a young girl named Olga who lives alone in an old house that is quite scary, and looks in her hand as an old rabbit doll. Then Olga directs the doll to all sides to look for something. Then Olga went down to the basement where there was a covering wall made of plywood. Olga sawed it and formed a circular hole. Meanwhile, we will be reintroduced to a man named Isaac, who has just been released from the hospital after an accident that left his head injured quite a bit. Currently he is with his friend named Beret. It is known that Beret offers Isaac a job, because he knows that Isaac must be in dire need of money after being hospitalized for a long time. The job is to take care of her own niece who turns out to be Olga. The Beret explains that Olga has a mental disorder that causes sufferers to experience hallucinations, delusions, and confusion in thinking, so it takes a caregiver who wants to take care of her because her parents are no longer around and currently Olga lives alone in her house. With a wage of $200 per day made Isaac finally accept the job. After that, Isaac and Barrett had arrived at the location, and it turned out that Olga's house that we saw earlier was on an island surrounded by sea water, so they both had to use a boat to get there. Arriving there, Isaac enough to see the conditions that look scary. Then Barrett also showed a thick vest connected by chains and tied in the basement, which one vest was used by Olga's grandmother who has a sleeping sickness to walk in order to stay at home. But what's interesting is that Isaac was asked to wear a vest at Olga's request, because Olga was afraid that Isaac would enter her room, so Isaac had to comply with this unusual requirement for the $200 per day he would earn. Then we will be shown the strange behavior of Olga who sits with her eyes closed. Then Barrett says that this is probably the easiest job ever, so Isaac is expected to feel at home here and take care of Olga as well as possible. After Barrett left, he went around with the chain that tied his body, but when sobbing was about to pee, his body couldn't reach the toilet because the chain came from a dark basement, so Isaac chose to surrender and didn't find out where the chain was hooked. When opening the back door there, Isaac saw a dog looking in the yard. Then Isaac sat right in front of the door relaxing. Suddenly someone pulled the chain so that Isaac almost fell backwards and thought if it was Olga's doing. Isaac went to his room but Olga was still in the same position. So this was the first horror that Isaac experienced in this house. At night Isaac went to his room and lay down on the bed, but soon he was surprised by the fall of a painting of a woman with a scary look. Feeling uncomfortable because he was being stared at, Isaac then turned the photo over, but suddenly something happened again. For the second time, Isaac experienced a phenomenon beyond reason because the painting changed its position by itself, and when Isaac approached him suddenly both of the painting's eyes immediately turned into glaring, which this scene was enough to make the psychologists who watched it a little disturbed. As a result of this incident, Isaac could not sleep and decided to sleep in the middle of the house. That's when Olga appeared with an arrow weapon in her hand. Then she told Isaac that Barrett and his father used to be a hunter. At this moment, Olga also informed that her father also suffers from claustrophobia or fear of narrow and closed spaces, in which one his mother also has mental problems because he deliberately chained his father with the vest and put the key around his neck, so that one day his father was locked in the basement and was in a dark place, making his claustrophobia even more, so that made him stressed and desperate to commit suicide by shooting himself with the arrow.
Remember one night my mother thought it would be funny to put him in the harness. With his claustrophobia, he couldn't stand being down there for long basement. And when he came back up, the door was locked.
After Olga returned to her room, Isaac sat down to continue his sleep, but above the fireplace there was a stuffed bunny that we saw earlier, which one when the atmosphere was quiet and the only sound was the sound of crickets. Suddenly the doll moved by itself accompanied by the opening of the door.
Hello?
Instead of looking for what caused the door to open, Isaac actually saw a basement room which was now lit by lights. Then he went down there and saw the end of the chain, which was also fastened with a large padlock. Here Isaac found a plywood wall with holes made by Olga earlier, and while Isaac was peeking, Isaac also saw something surprising. Isaac was surprised when he found Olga's mother's body, which was hidden in there, and thought that Olga had killed him. Isaac immediately went to Olga's room and saw an air hole near the phone. Then he went to another room and took the phone through the hole. After that, Isaac contacted Barrett to ask him to come there with the police, because most likely Olga had killed her mother and hid her behind a wall. While waiting for Barrett to come with the police, Isaac went back to the basement to find a way to untie the chain, but soon he heard Olga call him upstairs through the communication device that was there. When they got to the room, Olga finally explained something that would reveal the real facts, that it turned out that the perpetrator who had killed her mother and hid behind a wall was none other than her late father, and assisted by Barrett.
Barrett and your father killed her?
Yes.
It is not explained in detail the reason they both killed Olga's mother, but most likely the cause was mental and psychiatric illness suffered by her mother, because her actions were getting more dangerous and strange. Then Barrett and Olga's father decided to kill Olga's mother and hide her body behind wall. Meanwhile, the reason why Olga didn't report to the police was because she didn't want her father to be imprisoned and remembered as a man who killed his own wife, so Olga chose to turn a blind eye and ear to the incident, even though she was well aware that Berets and her father had done something wrong. Hearing stories about the past of this mentally ill family made Isaac finally fed up and decided to leave. Then he remembered the key that was placed on the table near the air hole, but when he was about to pick it up, Olga immediately broke Isaac's finger so that he failed to take the key and went to the kitchen finances while groaning in pain. Isaac accidentally saw a newspaper about Olga's mother who had disappeared. In the photo, Isaac saw the key that was worn around his neck. Then Isaac returned to the basement to check on Olga's mother's body, and sure enough, the key was still there. When he managed to take off his vest, suddenly the lights went out and it seemed as if there was an unseen influence. Then when Isaac was about to return to his room, Olga was seen sitting there with her eyes closed as usual. Whether she was avoiding what or afraid of whom, Isaac immediately took back his vest and put it on Olga, so she couldn't escape before Barrett and the police arrived at the house. While waiting for Barrett and the police to come, Isaac chose to stay here because it was useless to get out of the house because he still couldn't leave this island. But it turned out to be a bad idea, because suddenly Olga attacked Isaac with an arrow and succeeded, injuring his thigh. So as a result, Isaac fainted while enduring the pain he was suffering. This is where we will be taken to flashback to 1 year ago before Isaac had an accident and was hospitalized. Which one at that time Isaac's face was still neat without any beard and mustache that filled his face. At that time Isaac, who happened to be unemployed, was visited by Barrett, who offered him a job that was quite easy, but his sin was really big, because Isaac was asked to kill someone.
This breakdown he's having, he knows things about me.
You want me to sneak into your brother's house and lock him in the
Barrett tells that he and his older brother, Olga's father, have killed Olga's mother and hidden her body behind a wall. There is a worry in Barrett, who is afraid that one day Olga's father will speak out about the murder they both committed to Olga's mother. So Isaac was ordered to kill Olga's father, exploits his phobia of small spaces by locking him in the basement.
What happens to him down in the basement?
The stress will probably kill him when he realizes he's trapped down there. Collect your money and leave.
Barrett actually could do it with his own hands, but apparently he didn't have the heart and didn't want to get his hands dirty, so it was better for Barrett to pay Isaac, who was in need of money at that time. After that, Isaac was desperate to accept the job by going alone to this house, and when he got there, Isaac had time to hear Olga's voice from the communication device, realizing that Barrett would kill him too, so he took the initiative to write a message on paper which was a warning that Barrett wanted everyone here to die. After writing down the warning, Isaac then went down to the basement to find out where the target was, namely see Olga's father, but how shocked he was when he found that Olga's father was injured and dying from injuring himself using his arrows. In the following scene, Isaac has returned to his apartment and cancelled the job. Soon Barrett appears and shows the warning paper that was written by Isaac before. There Barrett is disappointed with Isaac, because if he really doesn't want and has no intention of doing the job, Isaac shouldn't have done it. Writing a warning like this, from here Barrett finally saw that Isaac had the potential to open his mouth about his actions in the future. So Barrett decided to push Isaac down from the building, which one incident caused Isaac to end up with a fatal injury to his head, thus making Isaac become amnesiac, and Barrett uses this to pretend to offer back a job as a nanny in order to get Isaac back there and trapped in the house in chains. Back with Isaac, who now he finally woke up and managed to pull an arrow from his thigh. After that Isaac went to the bathroom and there he accidentally found a hole leading behind the wall of the house. Realizing that Olga would not let him live, Isaac was desperate to go in there so he could find a way out. But Isaac ended up at the point where Olga's mother's body was hidden, which one Isaac immediately took a small saw and tried to cut the plywood to get out of there. But as time went on, Olga's mother's body started acting up, when its position suddenly changed by itself, which we know the dead can't move on their own without the help of the living. So Isaac covered his head with a beanie so it wouldn't be too scary, but, again, Isaac was surprised by his skull cap which suddenly had a hole in it so that one eye became clearly visible, and that was even more terrifying. Soon Olga appeared who was looking for him, so Isaac immediately hid in an invisible part, followed by the appearance of Barrett who turned out to have arrived here, and of course alone without bringing the police. Barrett also expressed his disappointment to Olga for messing up and allowing Isaac to be released from his vest. Due to being scolded and cursed with harsh words, Olga finally decided to kill his own uncle, then left there and left the Barrett locked in the basement. That's when Isaac resumed sawing his plywood. Then when Barrett called him to get out immediately, that's when Isaac's voice emerged from the communication device. It turned out that Isaac had managed to get out and was currently in another room and planning to leave this house soon. Then, who is sawing the plywood?
I'm out. I'll send someone to get you. Bart, can you hear me?
In the darkness, the atmosphere suddenly became silent and slowly began to tense. Then as Barrett aimed his flashlight, something suddenly happened. It is known that Barrett has died by the curious spirit of his own sister-in-law. Meanwhile, Isaac has managed to get out of the house with Olga's pet dog tied in the yard. As for Olga, must be trapped in the house due to the vest that has now restrained herself without knowing where the key is. So this incident becomes its own karma for Olga. Even though she did not interfere in the murder of her parents, Olga is still sinful because she has deliberately allowed evil without doing anything. And Olga is predicted to die in a few days as a result of not being able to do anything. Someone else will send groceries because his uncle Barrett is now dead. As for Isaac, he is known to have died while crossing to the mainland due to a leaking boat and drowned due to not being able to swim. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Leave a like and turn on notifications, it really helps the channel out. See you in the next video.